All right. This is Tuesday, August the 3rd, 2021. I am Bill Kanda, Chairman of the Board of Health, and we will call this meeting to order at 1:30 on the dot. This meeting is being recorded via Zoom. It's not being recorded any other way other than by notes.
YouTube.
I'm sorry, and YouTube. And then we will have minutes to this meeting later.
Right.
Silence your phones
Yes.
and remind me to turn it back on.
Will do.
It came by 3 people last time. Okay, so we're ready to proceed. Let's let the OEM lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks. Any remembered it? Thank you, Mr. OEM. Roll call.
William R. Kanda,
Present.
Tommy G. Flower,
President.
Commissioner Kevin B. Day,
Present.
County Attorney Clint Smith,
Clinton A. Smith.
County Attorney Smith.
That's County Attorney.
County Attorney
C.A. Smith.
Dr. Clifford Brown.
Present.
Okay.
And we've got several visitors here. Who is this in the corner?
Taylor Day Wentworth.
Okay.
Right through Adrian Washington Department of Business Management.
And we have Reggie PIO on Zoom.
And we have our admin manning the camera action and production today. Thank you. Okay, audience introduction, and we have agenda to amend if we have anything. I do not have anything.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Approval of the minutes, July 6th, and they looked fine to me, although I didn't see, it doesn't mean that a comma may have escaped me. Any comments, guys?
No.
Tom?
No, sir.
Okay, and move we approve the minutes from July 6th, 2021.
Second. Go ahead.
Tom seconded. Then move to second and approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye. Tom?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Okay, thanks. Aye, Kanda. Moving right along. You got reports today, Board of Health, anybody here? Let's start with Tom. Kevin?
Nothing here, no.
And I don't either. So this is good news so far. If Dr. Brown doesn't ruin the trend here. You're up. You have a couple things to present, and then we'll get into the consideration of the metrics and the issues under new business if there is anything to discuss. Go ahead, Dr. Brown. Floor is yours.
If you would like 3 pages, I believe, from the end of this packet that I gave you, there should be an up-to-date, 4 pages, up-to-date status. Cedars in the dashboard reporting.
Okay.
Currently, today we have, within the past 7 days, we have 2 people who have tested positive through the state. We have 1 week positivity of 11.9%, 2 week positivity 9.5%, cumulative positive cases of 239, cumulative tests 3,772, and it's 92+% PCRs. Hospitalizations, at least 1, does not give me a breakdown. Cumulative deaths as of today, 3 recorded in Cedars, but there was no indication who, where, when, how, whatever. So I can't give you any of that information. The
What does that mean? I know you've asked them to straighten up the reporting and report them to the right people, whoever they're accounted to.
Yeah, Ms. Shimamura, I contacted Vernon to check with our particular order. And he said he checked also, and he didn't get any information as to who. The other thing, I did get back information from Ms. Shimamura. She said that the person that our source had talked to had been using a different source. What that source was, still not identified. So I still.
Somebody at state.
Somebody at state.
You got some information from somebody
Yes.
they don't even
Yeah.
know where yet.
Yeah. So Ms. Johnston, Gabby Johnston, was looking at a different listing of some kind, but it was not our Cedars.
So do they have the right process now in place? So
No.
we can count on what's
No.
going forward?
Nothing has changed.
Okay.
The only thing that's changed is the cumulative history, and that's the number 3. So right now, as much as I would like to be able to give you the rest of the story, I can't.
And you haven't got any information on this the third?
No, that's what I said.
Yeah, no.
There's absolutely nothing under Cedars, going under reports and going to the hospital listings. There's nothing for that same thing under death listings.
Okay.
No information whatsoever.
There's one question, if I
Yes,
may. Could you define again for me, at least, what 1 week positivity stands for? 11.9% of what?
Okay. It's of our population and those tested.
There must not have been very many people.
No, we're having very few people get tested. And so when somebody does show positive,
Makes it higher.
yeah, there's a higher percentage. So if you have, just to give you an idea, just if you have 10 people tested and 1 person shows up, you're gonna have 10%. I mean, that's,
So you say of our population and the people getting tested?
no, just our people. But we have such a small population, we do not have a lot of people getting tested.
And that's why you've been using the raw numbers, which is 2 people.
That's right.
Outbreak and any.
That's right. Because I actually have the numbers, I contact them, investigate, trace everything we possibly can to get them set up.
Okay.
Plus the state does it. So we have both with the double shot, so to speak. I usually contact them first, Tom.
So I'm still not clear. So when you say we have a 1 week positivity of 11.9%, that is 11.9% of
People tested.
in our county
In
for the
our
entire,
For that week.
That's right. For
For
that
the week.
7-day period.
and so how many people were tested last week? And there's something here that's just not clicking with me. I'm sorry.
So giving the numbers, in order to get 10%, you'd have to have 2 people were tested positive,
Well, if you had,
20 people.
if 10 people were tested,
Well, how many were tested? What are the numbers?
I can't give you, I can look that up for you to find out how many were tested last week and just subtract.
I had 44 in the last week. You could pull that
That
from
were
the Cedars, well, you have Cedars, but
Right.
public portal. So I don't know what day it ended, but we have 44 tested in the last week and about 10% positivity.
So 4 of those 40 were positive or
Yeah.
were
Within
positive.
the last, yes.
Well, you have a number of 2.
Yeah, we have 2 right now, but we have more tested.
But it's confusing. Here's why. It says new cases within past 7 days. So that's an cumulative of the week, is how I read it.
Yes, sir.
If it was just today, you got 2 more, that's different.
No, this is 2 within the past week. That's
Okay, and so in
7.
that past week, we probably had 40 people or,
We've had, approximately 20 some people tested during this period of time.
okay, so it's 20.
Yeah, so it's approximately, this is almost 12%.
Yeah.
Yesterday was 15, so it drops depending on the number of people tested and the number of people who've shown positive.
Mhm.
Again, it's by the state calculation.
And it's also done, we don't know if a person got tested outside the county.
Yeah, but is
We
if
don't know
they
what
were,
the actual amount.
yeah, if they were tested through the lab. Now, if their clinic has a laboratory, they don't necessarily, okay, they're supposed to be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it was actually reported to the state. If it's tested and sent as far as getting results to the state lab, then it's going to be in Cedars because they have to report it. It's supposed to be reported by law, and I think it usually is.
Okay.
So I would prefer to see the number of people tested in that 7-day period. And then the percent of those that came up positive. We're kind of having to read between the lines here, right? Unless I'm missing something. I have no idea how many people were tested.
Once again, I can go back a week ago today and just subtract that number of the cumulative tests from the number that I'm giving you, 3,772 today.
It doesn't hurt to see that. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
what we care about is how many are positive at
right.
any given time.
And I can
And
do that for
It
you.
would be nice to see if people are wanting to find out if they're positive or not.
Yeah.
We may at some point want to do something about it if they're not. So,
Yeah, everything's on here except the number of people that were tested.
Right. And I guess this,
So, excuse me for interrupting. This is Reggie, PIO. So the number tested in the last 7 days is 34, based on the numbers that Dr. Brown reports.
yeah,
thanks, Reggie.
You're welcome.
Okay, keep going.
okay, so that's the metrics, Cedars metrics. However, we also have been vaccinating.
Oh, there's one other thing that was missed
Sorry.
that you did report before. The person that was in the hospital is out of the hospital,
Yes.
but it doesn't say.
Yeah, but there have been there's another.
Is there another one that's still in there?
And they don't have to be in the hospital for a long time.
Somebody just hit the hospital.
They just go in like for a night,
Okay.
and that's still in the numbers saying, okay, there was a hospitalization.
That's in the
And that's
last 2 weeks.
2 weeks,
Okay.
14 days.
Yeah.
Exactly. And try as I might, I have not been able to get those exact numbers and who and where and when,
That's okay.
which hospitals. And our hospital our hospital Zoom meeting was canceled yesterday, so I couldn't even answer. Vaccination status. This last Friday, we gave 20 first doses. I want you to notice the differences. If you recall, we were doing mostly second doses for the last month. Things have turned around and we are now mostly first doses. So if anything, that indicates to me an interest, some people are getting concerned and they're coming in. So that's an encouraging thing. So
It also looks good. You got first doses and second doses are about the same. On the total.
yes, with what, 1,100, 100 and some differences, 160 or so differences. So 3609 total vaccinations. We will be not this Friday, but the following Friday, we have enough people to put on another vaccination. So we don't want to, if we have 3 people, we'll break the vial for that wastes 7 doses. And if you notice, Big Pharma, they're increasing their charges to the government. Moderna, 25%, Pfizer, 50%. So when you're dealing with billions of dollars and that's what you're dealing with, that's a big chunk.
And I'd like to comment actually on the vaccination numbers. Custer County is a little odd, as you gentlemen all know. The estimates for year-round population are 5,000. That's real hit and miss. Maybe the new census data from last year will start to give us a better figure, but that 5,000 is literally just a calculator estimate. So what I like to go off is registered voters. And so this last year we had, I think 3,200 registered voters. If you take our 1,734 fully 2 shots vaccinated, that puts us right near the state average of 52% vaccination for year-round residents. So I know we show up pretty low by official state standards in the 30s range. I'm not convinced that's 100% true just because of the way Custer County population operates.
Good point, and I've recognized that in the past, that's true.
Florence has a big, or sorry, Fremont County has a big issue with this because the prison population's included with
Yeah,
them.
that's always been a sore spot.
Yeah, they're probably pushing closer to 60% according to them if you pull out the prison population. So we're actually doing fairly well from the records that we do have and that we do know. And you have to remember, we do have about 500 people under the age of 12 if you include the Amish population. So that gives you an idea of where we're at for adults over 12.
Okay, hold on a second. For the record, put down new visitor is Jordan. You got him? Make sure everybody knows who's
The
here.
other thing that, excuse me, yesterday the state came out with was that they are going to count all the prison populations, PSC populations in with everybody else, which is really going to change the numbers. Because you have so many people coming in and coming out, being transferred back and forth between various facilities, trying to keep those people. I mean, if you get everybody under control, then they change a quarter or a third of your population you bring in from other facilities.
So how are they handling it? Say it again.
With a great deal of
So,
difficulty. Yeah, because it's gonna, their numbers change. It's very, very difficult to manage. I wanted to, with trying to put things in perspective because numbers can be so thick and misleading. I wanted to give you kind of an update, a feel. And this should go very, very quickly, but if you notice, I've made a small tick mark down where Custer County is at the bottom. I'm sorry, I don't have that. So we're not faring too badly as far as the state numbers are concerned. Just to give you an idea. Next page, we won't belabor any of these, but Colorado has shifted from, it was at one time, if you guys recall from some of the numbers I gave you, we were number 3 from the top of the incidents. And now we are down high blue, 4 from the bottom of the blue. So things have changed. We're not doing badly in comparison nationally right now.
well, we really weren't ever, it's because our numbers are so small.
That's right.
It's skewed to compare it.
True. Absolutely. The next page, this is vaccine effectiveness. And now there's been so much in the press. Almost hate to even bring this up, but the vaccine efficacy, and this is, to me, doing pretty well. The 12 to 59 age group, which is a little over 50%, what, 55 or so, 58% of our residents are between 12 and 59. I don't know exact numbers there, but they're about 82.3% efficacy or effectiveness.
Aren't we the third oldest county in the state
Nation.
and the nation?
You know, we're the first in the state, third in the nation.
First in the state, I thought we were third, though.
Yeah,
That's an honor.
absolutely.
To show you how tough the pieces are up there.
I'll just keep my hair in the grease here. Mostly still have some. If you notice 70 and above is in the blue, so it's a real thin line there, and it's about 84%. and 84.6% with 60 to 69. So just to kind of give you an idea, age group wise, on the bottom graph, these are, that was last week. Remember, these numbers are not from this week because they can't gather all the numbers and put them on a graph that fast, okay? But these numbers are from last week in July. So the vaccine efficacy rate just by age group is now showing about 82.3%.
Okay, and for the record, so it's clear, how do they calculate it? Because efficacy is
Okay,
kind of nebulous.
yeah, okay, but effectiveness, people can say, okay, if they got the vaccine, did they get sick? Okay,
Mhm.
and so 82% did not.
So that implies
18%.
18% said they were sick, or we don't know.
Yeah. Remember what I've noticed anyway, and there's no research here. This is literally observation. But the people that I'm seeing calculate these numbers have commented the same thing. That is, if you got the vaccine, that you didn't get nearly as sick and the death rate really drops. Okay, when they do go through a breakthrough when they get sick. Okay, however, the people who had the COVID and say, well, I don't need the vaccine now. When they get the new COVID, they're breaking through. This new
Right.
variant is not respecting the fact that you already had COVID from the other.
It's more contagious. But
It is more contagious, but the point is that the people's immunity that built up, immunity from having COVID is not working very well for them.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, I'm trying to be quick here. Hospitalizations, which kind of, they follow about a week to 2 weeks behind the other numbers for efficacy, but for people who actually are showing up positive, then they keep getting sick and they finally give up and say, I've got to go see somebody because I'm not getting better here in my 3 to 5 days, whatever. Anyway, if you notice, everything is pretty well plateaued in the number of new COVID hospitalizations.
Pretty low numbers. Huh?
Yes, yeah, we're actually doing pretty well, all things considered, in spite of what the birds are saying out here.
This is county or state?
This is our state. Okay, so across the state. So when people want to go on vacation, and that's what they're doing right now, they can say, yeah, if I've had the vaccination, if I have my masks, when I'm going into places I don't know and around a whole bunch of people, I have no clue whether they've been taking care of themselves or not. They can at least say, I have a pretty good chance of doing fairly well. Okay, and then the 7-day average, the number of new and then administration relative to the records, 1%. The guesstimate, if you notice at the bottom, the third line down of that little blurb there, written blurb below the orange line, about 30% are actually reported. 30% of the true numbers are actually reported. But if you notice, once again, if you just follow the graph, it's dropping from where it was in May, because we had a lot of hospitalizations. If you guys recall, in May, we had multiple people get pretty sick and end up in ICUs. So that's dropping down. It's not down to where it was back in the middle of March, but it is at least dropping again. So just trying to give you some general trends so you can put the data that I give you daily into some kind of a framework to understand how to interpret it for people when they call you and talk to you. Okay. The next page is proportion of cases, hospitalizations, deaths among unvaccinated. And notice there are a few. So the deaths that are due to COVID in unvaccinated. Okay, 97.2% are unvaccinated. Breakthrough count, okay, once again, breakthrough is where you've already had the disease and you get it again. It's 39. So breakthrough count, that was back in January through July. When you go April through July, just recently, it's about the same, 37. Not a lot of variation there. So once again, these are deaths due to COVID. When we're dealing with deaths among COVID cases, where it's the second or third or fourth or whatever in the list from the coroner, that was 74 in January through July, and April through July, 65. So it dropped some. And then July 1st through the 17th, of course, that's only 30 days, but that was down to 11. So 6 times, if you're taking a 6-month look from the very first column over there, January through July, multiply our 11 by 6, we come out 66, which is still pretty close in that range between the first measure there in January through July of 74 and the one April through July of 65. But the April through July are less months and still pretty close to worrisome. Now, the good thing for us, in my mind anyway, and obviously there have not been as many people given Moderna vaccine as there have been received the Pfizer. Okay, but it's really hard to tell here, but there are less people with breakthroughs with Moderna. It doesn't measure up to the total Moderna's given. There are less people breaking through there than there are in Pfizer or with J&J. So just some comments.
Moderna seems to be more.
It seems to be more effective, particularly for the Delta, and they're over 95%. It's, I think, 98% right now of all the Delta variant. So once again, when people ask you, the next page you can see very quickly, the Delta variant is the gray. So you see it's literally taken over from what used to be there. So we really don't have other variants.
Is this a state look?
This is a state, yes, this is absolutely state. But it gives you the trends. So what we were dealing with, B117, was down to 3.1% of all the cases reported throughout the whole state. So this is what we are to effectively expect. So 95.5% is now throughout the state Delta.
But that number looks like it's a big deal, but the percentage of deaths or hospitalizations.
That's right.
is very low.
That's right. So we don't have our hospitals plugged full of people in their ICUs. That's always been the push, so that we don't overwhelm our capabilities in responding as best as we possibly can. Next, I wanted to go through some of the changes because just yesterday we got a new executive order. And I'm aware of the fact that we
Where is
are,
that sheet?
yes, it should be
Third
3 sheets.
The third to the last?
Yeah, third to the last. Says on the top, summary of changes for Public Health Order 21-01. Summary of changes for 20-3. Now, once again, you can read through this and study it if you'd like to, with all the numbers and the exact comments, directives, but just basically because of the Delta variant, because there are more people getting sick again, even though it's not so much in our county, still the governor has updated his orders. So this is where we are for,
So what do you think is significant?
to me, so far for us, it's not. Okay, like the variances, the differences, I should not use the word variances. The differences are not what the rest of the state. Now, if you go into the skiing, the water skiing, big lakes, the hiking, and so on, places that have a significant amount of tourist activity, those people are getting hit much harder than we are. And have been routinely throughout the ski season. So we have a number of pieces here, but nothing as far as I'm concerned that except that he wants to have a lot of pressure put on people to undergo the vaccination. We're vaccinating anybody and everybody, even if we have to break a while and waste the rest of it. That's happening.
Are we getting supplied okay?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the supplies are more than anybody needs now. And because they stay frozen, they last forever, essentially. Relatively speaking, of course.
Okay.
Okay. The summary changes were 20-33. That's the requirement for the whole genome sequencing, the COVID-19 positive molecular, or the PCR, which is what I really depend on, positive result. All of those things will be looked at now for complete genome sequencing. So, now, for the schools, and Dr. McFalls has indicated that they will, said, and these are his words, what we've been doing has worked pretty well. So we don't plan any big changes. So we'll leave that essentially with him. We just stay in contact. The CDC guidance that has come out here, the one, I guess, a couple of big things is that the kids are literally not forced to be 6 feet apart anymore. So we can get the whole class seated, because they can now be 3 feet apart by the CDC guidance. And then things have been changed basically because kids are just not getting sick. Very, very few. We have not had a single child die. Last year is that 6 months. Now, if a child does show up positive, they're not asking for the whole school to be shut down. They are
Are
asking,
asking for the family to be shut down?
yeah, hopefully not that either. But they're literally asking for masking, for that child to be home, and for everybody else to be under quarantine. But for the unvaccinated individuals, that would be recommended. So they're actually using the same terms that you gentlemen have used, recommendations, not requirements.
So they started football practice and some track and some other stuff that they're doing. Volleyball. No issues so far.
So far so good. Now, remember, we do not have a vaccine that we can give to any of our football players because they're all under, effectively, 16, 17, they're all under 18 years old. So if they are to receive anything like that, they've got to go out of county.
All I was working was if anybody got sick and the family had to be isolated.
Right. They have to be quarantined for sure. Okay. Once again, I can give you, in fact, I did send to Reggie, and she is in the process of publishing pieces at a time, because that's a long document from CDC. So anytime that you gentlemen want to receive the whole kit and caboodle, you can do it. It's accessible to you. Now, I'm just going to give you a real quick breakdown. Your very last page that I've included in there. We did a couple of sports clinics, and we have another one coming up on Friday. Or, excuse me, not Friday, tomorrow, Wednesday. We have 30 scheduled, but we have had 20 scheduled in each of the clinics. We had 13 show up. The first time we had 10 show up, the second time we're hoping for a little better than 50% this time. But if all of them show up and more of them are making appointments, and as the school entry and beginnings approach us rapidly. So I'm hoping that more show, so we'll have a total of 53 sports physicals. These are no cost to parents or anybody. And we have had a fairly thorough assessment, a standardized sports physical exam with physiotherapists evaluating for the orthopedic, for the knees, and so on.
Clinic doing too. Is the clinic participant?
Not that I'm aware of. No. As a matter of fact, we have used two Heart of the Rockies physicians so far to come in and do that portion of the exam. Okay. Immunizations, we've already gone through those things, touched on all of that. And for I gave you also vaccinations provided in the last 6 months. And you have the whole listing for 15, but it's a total of 118 vaccinations in the last 6 months. Okay. Now we're not talking about COVID here. So these numbers don't match. No, these are not COVID vaccinations. These are MMR and so on, tetanus, everything else. By the way, for the public information, if the person's insurance is not covered for their vaccination, then we turn it over to an agreement called VaxCare, so that they will cover those things for us. We cover the cost of the vaccine itself. So there's no cost to our people in general. If they can't afford to pay, if they have to get a rabies shot or something like this, we don't do rabies. We send them to emergency room because that's the other place that they keep the rabies vaccine. But for all the rest of them, we try to take care of it. So no health fair, as you know, this spring because of the COVID. We do have the 3 radios that you gentlemen have graciously provided for us so that we can actually do our job.
Hey Cliff,
Yes, sir.
on the vax thing, does that include shingles vaccination?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's all the other vaccines, everything from tetanus to shingles to MMR.
Thank you.
Does that also include flu?
Yes. But our flu season is not so much during the period of time that we just got through.
Okay.
So the flu, we did 600, which was a record, especially during COVID. We did over 600 flu vaccinations starting in August to the end of the year, end of the calendar.
Last
year. Yes, last August. Okay. And then the request, I just went through all of those things and even listed the wheelchair accessible van that we acquired by donation, which is very, very much appreciated. Questions, gentlemen?
Do you by chance see the health fair coming back next year?
I'm really, really hoping, because there was so many people have expressed interest and said, are you having it this year? So if there's a chance at all, not putting people at risk by having them come into a health fair.
I think it was very well, a lot of participation in that.
Well received.
Do you think school's going to require masks for all their students when school starts?
I don't think so. I think we will have masking as a necessity if we have breakouts. We have kids that come down hill. They will keep the distancing. I believe that, like Like I said, Dr. McFall said, what we did worked. So we're going to try to continue as much as we possibly can along the same lines.
Good. Did Laura Lockhart's going to get a hold of you
No, she did not.
to talk about the band and how you can set up it? She knows what capabilities it is and how you can share it.
Yes, sir.
we did.
And it certainly is to be passed out to used for any kind of function.
Even the DSO may have it. Or
Yes.
some point.
Having worked for 2 decades with disabled veterans and others, that is just, it allows life. Transportation.
If I may,
Go
sir.
ahead.
So back to your first page on the 7-day incidents per 100,000. So if we're to believe this, there's 6 counties that had no positive cases
In the last 7
in
days.
the last 7 days, from July 27th back to July 20th.
And that's cases reported, yes. Reported to the state lab.
So that leaves out people that don't get tested, and it leaves out
That's right.
people that aren't reporting. Why wouldn't a hospital report it or whoever?
Well,
tested?
because the hospital doesn't necessarily see these people. A lot of them don't report to anybody. We have a whole community here that does not report frequently. And so none of those get on the numbers.
Yeah, that's
So-
what I said first, but there are, you said initially there were some people that do get tested or positive and that aren't reported.
Yes.
Some other screw
Yeah,
up.
I've seen that several times, and I can't explain why the paperwork didn't happen.
So we really have to look at all these numbers with the caveat of they're probably not accurate.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Yeah, but the way I look at it, it's like a scale doesn't have to be exactly right at 100 pounds. It'll tell you if you're getting fatter or losing weight.
That's right.
So accuracy is important, but it also gives you a up or down.
It's like trends.
Yeah, as long as we don't get hung up on the numbers
Right.
and those trends.
It's never going to be perfect, frankly. So.
And that's why I tried for a while to report all the things that were reported to me. And I finally just gave up and said, we'll just use the Cedars numbers because this is not working.
Or the numbers that you know,
Right. And that's
Cedars
right.
may not have.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, that gives you the consistency in your reporting that way. Because if you're trying to report everything that's coming in one time and then you're reporting Cedars the next time, it muddies the waters.
That's right. Totally. And as Jordan said, when you're looking at trends, you're not looking at 0.6 or something like this. I mean, that to me is really meaningless.
Okay. So do you have any other concerns or issues that are looming or something that we need to know about or that you care about?
Nothing big nothing that I'm aware of at this time. Does that mean it's not going to show up tomorrow? No, but I don't have a lot of concerns.
Okay, any questions? Any public comment?
Actually, yeah, I do. And I know Dr. Brown has worked on some of this already. I saw the copy that he sent to the state. But one of the things that, it would be nice, and maybe you've had some updates, Dr. Brown, but the way we're starting to look at it, TC Smythe at KLZR has been a big push on this. But we have to send a request to the state every week to get actual updates on COVID death certificates. So at this point, we have 8 in Custer County deaths on the death certificates, but the state is only showing 3 right now. For some reason, the state is suppressing all deaths in county under 10. And so we had a COVID death, I think on July 23rd. And we're kind of using this as an example. How long does it take to show up in the state system? And that one would put us, if it eventually shows up, as 9. But the problem is when you go to the state website, like right now, or even in Cedars, it says 3. So if the public is going to make their own decisions, we need to find a way to get more accurate data when it comes to deaths, because that's the big one. You know, the case positives, as I said, are a scale, but 3 is a lot different than 9.
And we also need to know whether it's a complication or whether COVID actually caused it.
Well, and we made very clear that the person that signed off said that the underlying cause was COVID. Now, that's what we were very clear about. We only want stuff where that,
Want to hear
because
about
sometimes
it.
there's secondary ones and stuff. But if the attendant or whoever it was that did the autopsy decided, you know, but right now we're at 8 and we're likely going to be at 9, but we have no idea of the lag time before we get to that 9. And so the problem is even I've been under, you know, assumption until TC Smythe and KLZR finally got a response from public health. So that's something that I know Brown's been working on, but for me to really push the state, how do we get the death figures more accurately?
It sounds
in a
like they
faster
don't even
time?
know how to do it internally based on what he's saying.
It
The
doesn't seem to.
person they talk to, they don't even know.
Before you came in, I mentioned that Michelle
Oh, okay.
is pushing, and she said apparently what Abby Johnson reported was from a different measurement, so.
And we're not the only county with this problem. I
No.
reached out to a few other ones that are under 10 with that little asterisk, and they all have the same problems. But it's something that we need to continue to push, and I'm asking hopefully the board can continue to push, because people can't make accurate decisions if we're getting deaths 2 months down the road. Cases is one thing, it gives you a trend line, but deaths are completely different.
Well, it doesn't go any higher than Michelle, because she is the one that's accountable there. It's not the governor or
No, I
or Jill Ryan.
She did respond with that extra information yesterday.
Right.
But she's still pushing.
That would be concerning. I mean, I wonder how many counties it really is, because that would be. that
Well,
would
and
really
it's not
show
just
up.
on that. I don't think there's a county in the state that doesn't have an issue with this,
No, I get it.
with the state reporting in one sense or another.
That's true.
Not necessarily just with the deaths, but it's,
Yep, that's why, to me, it matters what we see and what you see and what you touch and how many you know that we should be reporting here. That's what I want to see. I don't care about Kyle or the state or anything else. I don't know how screwed up their reporting really is. And if it's, and we want to know how we're proceeding in the.
It's just disconcerting to me that, you know, even Dr. Brown can't see these things, you know. We've confirmed that with the state as well, that they're not putting it on the Cedars.
Right.
And, again, I think that's, I don't know why it's being suppressed. We've reached out to some of the other news organizations in the state to try to start asking questions, but
Yeah.
who knows how far that's going to go. But 9's a lot different than 3.
Well, go ahead.
Excuse me, Tom, for interrupting. This is Reggie. Jordan, I have a question. What time frame is that for those? I know you said there's like seems to be maybe a 2-month lag time to get the information. So when did the reports the first death? When does that start?
So the number I'm using is from April 1st, 2020. That's
Okay.
what TC Smythe required, and I'm working with her, but I'm trying not to open too many contact lines. And the last update that we have is from July 3rd. That was one of the ones that got put up today in the within 30 days category, but that was a death reported on July 3rd. So we're asking the state to try to provide us with all of the dates to those. But
So that's a very good point. But from a statistical point of view, and I'm a statistic, I would be more interested, because in the beginning of an emergency, everybody's scampering, everybody, processes are all hosed. They ought to be fixed now.
Yeah, by
So
this
I
point.
care about what do you see in the last 6 weeks and going forward and seeing if they're actually coming in and what's the lag time and all that.
And we don't have that data yet. They said they're trying to provide it. So
Okay.
that's all. We don't know when a lot of those deaths
I'm
happen.
hoping that's what our public health agency is asking for.
It is what we asked for.
That's right. So, and she said they're kind of trying to clean up their house, but I can't imagine why those numbers aren't at their fingertips now. Why don't they?
Well, they seem to be, because when they do get reported, they're working off of a different internal system that they can send to us.
So this last one, if you know for truth, is number 9 is something we already know. You know, and it's showing up.
Right, it happened within the last 30 days.
So it's at least a 30-day process, it sounds like.
Yeah, which is not.
Which isn't too cool.
Yeah.
But it's hard for them when you have somebody die on your table and they have coronary artery disease, I mean, they have
Yeah, sort through it.
dysfunction, to say, okay, what was the causal factor?
The autopsy takes that long.
Yes, I mean, it's
Yeah, and that's a good point. but-
ordering studies.
And we're talking like 60 days
Of course,
sometimes.
of
it
course.
takes. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
absolutely.
That part I understand, but 30 to 60 is,
And that's over a 6-week period or whatever.
so it was just a public comment from this point, and I know Brown's been working on, I've seen a lot of the emails that he sent out, so, but it's something that, we do have to try to figure out how to put more pressure on. Maybe if we cross 10, which would be bad, they'll stop suppressing our data. But that's not a great way to,
It's not the way to fix
it's
it.
not how we want to get the problem fixed.
Okay, any other comments? Other issues? Are there any other items here? No other anybody in new business items that we don't have listed here? Right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I have one more thing? I'm sorry.
I missed your.
I didn't know we were going too far down the
Or
thing.
I would have said we're out of here.
Yeah, just real quick, and maybe this question's for Dr. Brown or the board here, but, and I don't know what jurisdiction this falls into. I know some of you are aware, but we've got a kind of a pollution problem going on in Great Creek and Lake Duluth.
Yeah, we're all aware of that.
Yeah, so, and maybe you guys are aware, but it's now for one of the big problems that we're having at Round Mountain Water District is the reason that their mechanical plant is so expensive is they can't dump into Great Creek because it's already so polluted. So they're saying, hey, no exceptions at all, even if it is pretty treated because the nitrogen phosphorus level is already too high. So I don't know if there's any part in the state, but the biggest problem we have is that one reason it's costing Round Mountain $6 to $8 million more to build a new treatment plant is because of the pollution already present in Great Creek and Lake Duluth. And so I don't know who it falls under. I don't even know if there are any, doesn't seem to be many regulations on that type of stuff. But, it does seem like indirectly, it is a health issue for at least the people in the cities of Custer County. So
It is. Well, if it's polluting Lake Louise, it's a county issue.
yeah,
And
And that's happened every year since I was a kid.
yeah.
and at least this doesn't get this year because of all the rain, so it's been diluted.
Flushed pretty well.
Yeah, we haven't had all the algae growth because we haven't had the heat,
Right.
but the problem is not taken care of.
So the only way we can handle it, Heath, and they've been on top of it, is to make sure the public's aware that at your risk, you don't jump into that lake.
True, but it
Certain
is starting to cause a problem. It's now costing the two towns an absorbent amount of
Yeah,
money.
because of the cost.
So I was just wondering, I know if you guys are moving or anything, or if you have any plans to try to address the pollution at Great Creek.
No.
And so I would ask at some point if you guys could discuss it and see if it even falls into the jurisdiction of the Board of Health or the BOCC. Because there's two problems that I can tell is we know it's agricultural related, but it's not clear 100% if it's overuse of fertilizers or just cattle being in riparian areas for too long. So but those are the two.
Even minuscule amounts that collect and then get into a hotbed in the
Yeah.
lake and breed themselves in there.
So, but there's some questions, and the state said they were going to do a study. It hasn't happened. I used to be part of the River Watch program when I was in high school here. That was part of CSU. I don't think it's the same. But it would be interesting to at least try to start to narrow down. Are we talking about synthetic fertilizers? Are we talking cattle waste? What are the main sources or some combination? And then how do we get those to come down over time?
You just to make the big picture so everybody's not thinking with levels have been less than 2 this year or even lower. And that's, if it were something, and I'm sure the state would have to, there's got to be places where it's got to be high. And so they do care about it. And the hazard things have to happen to go fix that.
Yeah,
There's been a lot of chlorine in that lake, or not
Yeah.
kidding, but fix it somehow.
But the problem is there hasn't been much action out of the state or the federal
Right.
Environmental Protection Agency. They're the ones that say, hey, it's too polluted, you can't do anything else.
I wonder, and maybe
There's not a
that'd
lot
be a
of
good thing from an investigation point of view to find out why they think it's not an issue.
Yeah, and we've been working with them and the state, but agriculture agricultural chemicals or even cattle in this state are fairly unregulated in that sense. But that still doesn't give us, is it one person putting too much out? Is it a collection? We don't really have a lot of answers to we know it's overly polluted, but we don't know exactly where it's contributing and how that's happening.
Justin Cross did say that he had tested all the way along the creek and that there did not seem to be one primary polluter.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. There wasn't one ranch that was just massively dumping. So with all the
Well, I
rain
think even if they didn't fertilize at all,
that's right, we still have some, but
cows.
but with all the rain we've had a lot of drainage into the creek.
And we had a drought last year, so you had a buildup as well. So, but I was just hoping that maybe you guys could discuss it either in BOC or Board of Health. It doesn't cost a lot of money to get the creek tested to start figuring out those things, but the state's dropping the ball and the federal is dropping the ball. But the problem is it's forcing, I mean, Round Mountain's to the point now that they won't do any more taps or sewers. By
She was here last
2021.
meeting.
Yeah, I saw some of that, but that's why I want to bring it up in this particular meeting. I'm not sure it falls under the purview of that stuff.
Well, it does.
It does.
Okay, so it would be interesting. It's not expensive. You could probably work with CSU. They used to have an entire Riverwatch database collection. They might even have funds for that type of stuff. But trying to get a better fix on how that's happening and where it's coming from might relieve some pressure on the two towns over time. So,
And we're watching it.
perfect. Thanks.
Thanks. Any other comments?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I talked about it a little this morning at the BOCC meeting. We've actually scheduled a workshop to deal with meeting our grant matches requirement or having the funds available to cover the upfront cost on reimbursable grants. I talked with Adrian yesterday a little bit about, as an example, the salaries that were paid to people to assist the vaccination clinics. We looked, it appears that some of those salaries came out of your education line, all of it or some of it. We didn't look up every employee. So we're gonna eat that salary or?
You know, the one thing that when we needed to hire people to essentially make appointments for vaccination clinics, because it was all of a sudden so standing up the USC. Anyway, those, we were supposed to have that passed through us, but public health never agreed to pay the salaries. We agreed to have it funded through us and then to turn them over to either grant monies to the county. We weren't sure who, but we had never agreed to assume that bill.
You thought it was COVID related.
It was
therefore
COVID-related.
somebody would pay for it.
Right, well, not, all I'm saying is just not.
Reimburse you.
Yeah, and we have assumed the people that we still need to do those things, to do the appointments, scheduling and so on. And we now have, by specifically in March, I believe it was, we took that over. I think it was the 10th. I'm not positive, but that's what sticks in my mind, that we have now started for the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, several months been paying them out of our grant, because then we said, okay, this will be our responsibility starting today. So we checked with our grantors, and that's what has been done.
So it's being charged to the grant, not since.
Yes, exactly. We are, like I said, now we are charging it to our grants.
So but before that,
Before that, that was beyond me. That was not part of what I agreed to.
so they got paid
They did get
that
paid.
amount.
Yes,
Took it out of the
That's right.
fund.
I think it just came out of general funds, but I'm sorry, I don't know. I didn't have a good feel at that time where the funding was coming.
Well, my perspective is that we voted to pay those people based on OEM and public health's assertion that that you would find the grant money to reimburse the county for those expenses through some COVID revenue. That's how I voted to pay those people. I don't know about anybody else, but obviously the American Recovery Plan wasn't even in existence then, so that we know wasn't an option. So I guess my real question is, what's your plan to try to recover those expenses? And I guess I look at both those departments because you were both in here putting that together as a collaborative effort.
Right. Once again, we agreed to initially pass those costs through us, but not to assume the responsibility.
So
of
did
those
you
costs.
apply for when we had?
I did not apply for a separate grant.
No, I'm talking about before December, in December, when we actually were working with the recovery cares money
The CARES, yes.
that, and we did reimburse people, agencies.
Yes.
I think you
For
got
salaries.
reimbursed for your masks that we had to buy. So was that, and everything COVID was supposed to be counted as
CARES Act.
hours, cares that, so that was never turned in.
Those were all turned in. That was turned in before the 31st of December.
Right, so those monies don't need to be recovered, you've already been reimbursed for it, is that what you're
No,
saying?
You're talking about two different things.
That's
That
fine.
whole
Yeah, we're doing-
coronavirus relief fund ended in December. We
Right.
hired these people in March.
That's what I'm saying. Well, in
So
March,
they would have never
he
been-
just told us in March is covered. It's between March and December that's not.
Yeah,
It's the portion from January to March 10th
Right.
that is not covered.
That's the point. And so overlooked it, or we didn't think about it, or?
Well, we didn't overlook it. I would say that we anticipated that there would be a second round of federal monies coming in. That would be one potential source for recovering that money for the county. We didn't know what they were going to call it. They called it a different name, but as I read the legislation, just my understanding of the legislation is that $18,000 would be eligible.
18 between the 2 years, it just,
So it's $18,000 for those employees and a little more. I don't know the exact number right now. It's probably 18,600 something. I believe that to make the county whole, we could apply the American Rescue dollars to that. I know that other counties have done that, and I don't see why we couldn't do that as well. And then
put in the.
the general fund would be made whole again, but that's not my decision. That would be my recommendation.
Well, it's more a recommendation. There's a committee going to be put together, and we're going to be depending on them to rank all these requests. We may or may not. There's not a lot of money. So we'll have to see how it plays.
And if that doesn't pay out, we'll have to look for other means of trying to recover that money.
Yeah, I know. I sat in here too and was told on more than one occasion that this is not costing the county anything. We do have grant money to pay these salaries, and I was told that on more than one occasion, as though it were in place already. So I would also question right along with Tom on that, because those words were used and given to us that all the salaries for these additional employees that we needed were taken care of. And that was the assumption that was given. So that is why the question came forth, I presume.
But then we don't have to beat a dead horse. That's money that's out there. We do, and it leads to the next question, which is why we're going to have a workshop. So from here forward, grants that are matched or grants that require upfront money and to be reimbursed, we have to budget for. Meaning you all, every department has to think ahead and put that in the budget so that when we are arguing about whether to fund an outreach or a OEM or a public health, we put it, we make the budget whole enough to make sure we can do the missions in each have. And now we know the pandemic was sort of, we never imagined anything where we were going to be locked down and couldn't do it. And you needed more people because you had people being vaccinated, you had people in emergencies we need to cover. You had a stand-up being every day.
I think it was easier for us, like for the rental of Lake Hall to get specific grant money than it is to get grant money from personnel. It's more difficult. And what the state was saying to us is that the county is going to receive special funds and that you should look at that funding source as the source to pay
Sure.
these positions.
Kind of lessons learned. So we got to, so that's the first thing we do. All right, Mr. State, what can we do? We have that fund, a fund, and that way it's playing out. I don't know what the Congress is going to do next.
So I can submit a request when that committee starts to make that whole.
Sure.
And well, it has to rest in that committee's.
So in answer to your statement, everything that I obligated to for salaries, for personnel, so on, and public health actually hired, covered by grants. Okay. 100%.
Fair enough.
And it continues to be. Okay. So like I said, we hired at that point. There's no loss in days, they're still continuing to work. Then at that point, on the 10th of March, we assumed the responsibility for the people that we kept. Some of the people we did not keep because we didn't have to have them. But those people on a part-time basis are still employed, still being paid through our grant monies.
This may be a rhetorical question, but given that, is there any obligation by the county to match it or to fund it up front or anything like that we need to make sure is in the
Not
budget?
that I'm aware of.
So right now,
Not
if
seeing
things
that.
continue like they are and the steady rate is there, you are budgeting for the future with your grants and the ability to
That's right.
expand your contract.
We do have the funds. They're not even close to being underfunded.
Are you talking about the EPR grant?
That's one of multiple.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, I certainly would support using this American Rescue Plan dollars to offset the cost that we've incurred. I don't have a problem with that. As long as I know that's an eligible expense. Since we talked, I did a little more research. There's one of the top bars of the American Rescue Plan is to support public health response to COVID. Well, if that expense wasn't in an effort to support public health response to COVID, I don't know what the hell would be.
That's right.
But I don't get to make that choice. We get to interpret somebody else's decision and then hope we interpret it correctly. So I want to say I'm not opposed to covering those expenses with this American Rescue Plan dollars if it's eligible. If it's even questionable, I would probably go all in on it. But because I think that's in the big picture, that's what that money is for.
Right, and I don't see from what you did do, I mean, to me, it's obvious. But, build the case, present it, we'll move forward.
If you want the actual grant that would pay generally salaries out of, it's ELC.
Okay.
I'm talking about salaries for investigation, tracing, and all the rest of the stuff.
And I was talking about the part-time people that you hired.
Yeah, it was all that.
And I'd say you, in those days, Adrian was speaking on behalf of both of you.
And you guys are partners in the process of scheduling.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't Adrian's desire, it was a direction from the state saying that OEM will do it.
I might add too that I made the statement a minute ago, but in everyone's defense, we were right in the middle of everything and we all make assumptions based on limited knowledge that we have as well. And one thing, if there's one thing I'm learning is that you should never assume anything, because if you do, you assume wrong. And so my remarks were not meant to be detrimental in any way to either one of you gentlemen, but I'm stating what I think that I heard. But there again, I don't know what information you guys were working off of, which might have been different than the information we were working off of as well. So I will say that I know when you're right in the middle of things, you have to make decisions on the fly as well, and you don't always have the information you'd like to have until later.
Yeah, I agree. I was just gonna say, I agree with what you're saying. I agree with the spirit of what you're saying. The time now has come to pay the piper.
That's true.
We did what we felt
Sure.
we had to be in the middle of the battle, and so now somebody's gonna have to pay for it.
And I will say this, just to pick it up the tempo here, it's you guys, we, the county, did a good job. We learned, we adapted, we juked it out, we dribbled the ball forward, whatever cliche you want to use, and look where we are. We have come through this and learned, and we've got two professional organizations here that are standing tall, have grown. So thank you for doing a good job. And now we're going to do a better job of getting the money back. So we'll see if we can do it, if we're able. All right, anything else? Okay, I don't hear a motion. You guys want to stay?
We adjourn.
Okay.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. It's we'll have a vote, not debatable. It's 2:45 almost. All in favor, say aye. Tom?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
And aye. What more okay with this? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Good discussion. Thanks for clarifying, and it was great.